Have you ever felt hopeless after spending those 4 or 5 years in college, and here you are, multiple job applications after, languishing, and asking yourself if you made the right choice in the major you took? Hi there, my name is Greg De La Cruz, and this is the Bangon Nata podcast, where we talk about work and life. As somebody from the working class myself, I'd like to share with you all my learnings from applying through all sorts of jobs that I could find. Looking for a job can be brutal. It can be an excruciating process filled with rejection and self doubt. Whether you are a fresh graduate or someone who has a very thick resume, landing a job that suits your needs can be a tough process. And you might already have this mental checklist, even if you might not have it in writing yet, of the things that you would want for your next job. It could be a good salary so you could afford basic necessities, probably good enough pay to support your family members, or you could want a job that sets you up for what you imagine as a good career progression. Let's say in the world of UX design, you're eager to find an entry level designer position that could eventually lead you to becoming a senior designer, and maybe one day you'll get a chance to apply for a product manager role. Or maybe you just want your foot inside the door of a well-renowned company, one that's probably in the level of Apple, or in the case here in the Philippines, maybe an Accenture or a corporate job at San Miguel Corporation. Whichever the case may be, some job seekers find it more difficult than others. For young ones especially, they would find after graduation that there's some disconnect between their college major and the actual jobs that are available in the market. And it's no longer enough to ask who's hiring or what are the open positions. These days, you find yourself asking, is my background enough to get me a job anywhere? In other words, is my college major worth anything? A little background on myself. I've worked full-time jobs for more than 7 years now, but it's worth noting that I did go through some short periods of unemployment. And short as they were, they felt so stretched out that a single day of waiting until someone from the 20 or so companies that I applied to respond felt like a whole week. Unemployment is difficult and demoralizing, and I don't take for granted at all the work opportunities that I've gotten along the way. And you might think that a licensed mechanical engineer won't have a tough time looking for a job, but no. Engineer might sound good on a resume, but that's probably as far as it gets. When I passed the board exams for mechanical engineering some years ago, there were 2,960 of us who passed. So that's nearly 3,000 additional unemployed mechanical engineers that are all looking for a job. And in 2019, it was even more than that. There were 3,928. And when you think about those numbers and you compare that to the job openings at any given time across all these popular online job boards, JobStreet, MyNemo, LinkedIn, Indeed, you're probably lucky to find even 100 jobs related to mechanical engineering. And then when you filter for entry-level jobs, those jobs that don't require any experience, which is what a fresh graduate is looking for, you'll get to less than half those numbers. So let's say there's 50 or 60 jobs out there, but there are 3,000 plus new job seekers for that specific field. And I learned that the hard way. I thought that just because I had this neat, brand new plastic card bearing my name and a unique license number, that companies would suddenly flood my phone number or email, scheduling me for interviews and fight for my attention. But I was wrong. After I took my oath in Cebu, shortly thereafter I did get a call from a local company, and I did go to that interview. It was my first ever interview. I hardly did any preparing, especially compared to future job interviews. And for some reason, a voice in my head told me, as you might guess, job searching as a fresh graduate wasn't the only time where I struggled looking for a job. Even when I had already gained some experience, the job hunting process was still a challenge. But at least this time, I had something to boast. I was no longer just looking for entry-level positions, and I eventually landed a facility supervisor role at a BPO. And it was then that I realized the real value of having some experience under your belt. And these years of experience wasn't just something that you could use to pad your resume or beef up your LinkedIn profile. I knew then that there was something meaningful about job experience. If only I could tell my past self to relax and soak up as much as it could from difficult situations and even from reluctant mentors. I have to say that the experience I had looking for my first job away from my home city and home province was the most meaningful, but at the same time, it was the most challenging. And unlike the previous job searches I had, for this one, I aggressively searched for jobs. Plus, the time between my initial search up to the time I got hired was more than 6 months in total. So I gave myself a lot of time to look for the next job. If I had been unemployed during the whole duration of my job search, I would end up draining my savings at that point several times over. I'd be negative on the balance sheet of my personal net worth. Fortunately, I had known better this time and not quit my job prematurely. I waited until there were some interested companies who did respond to my applications, and that was when I jumped ship. Though that was still a bit naive, the better thing would have been to wait until there was an offer, but then I was way too excited to be able to start fresh. Even then, even before I landed my next job, it was a struggle. I had about 10 different initial interviews, and I think I applied to at least 30 different jobs that were somewhat related to my background. So that's a conversion rate of 33%, and in the bigger picture, that's a success rate of 3%. Don't get me wrong, it was an absolute privilege for me to even be invited to these interviews, and I quickly drained whatever savings I had and spent what remained of my paycheck just so I could leave town and show up for these interviews. Now, I've talked way too much about myself for one episode. Let's go to the second main part of this episode, and that's for us to pose the question, is there such a thing as a useless major? Over the years, fast innovation and advancement in automation has made some jobs obsolete, and I don't think many jobs became completely obsolete. It's just that demand for clerical, primarily administrative jobs has been far less because of organizations adopting modern work tools. If you think back more than 20 years ago, not many companies in the Philippines even adopted email. We were slow in adopting these modern tools, probably because of slow internet. Can you even think of government agencies, especially LGUs, who used email in the late 90s? And so to answer the question I asked, I'd have to say that it's not that there are truly any useless college degrees that are still around. It's that some majors are obviously more useful than others. And of course, there are evergreen majors such as medicine and nursing, also in education and social services, accounting. So you can't blame your parents if you're a millennial and they pushed you to pursue these evergreen and timeless majors. Even if they might sound like they're out of touch sometimes, they also know the professions that will likely still be around despite the crazy pace of innovation and advancement. And also, those professions that will likely still be hiring even during a recession. But let's say you haven't yet chosen a major, or you're midway in one and are looking for a path that promises all the good things you want in a job: great pay, flexible hours, growth opportunities, etc. Let's try to spotlight a key factor for all job seekers out there: a good salary. According to the Department of Labor and Employment, and as posted on the blog of JobStreet, these are the 10 hottest jobs in the Philippines. Number 10 is statistician with a salary of 35,000. Statistician is a bit generic. Does this include data analysts and data scientists? Probably not data scientists, since they're paid way more than this. Number 9 is call center representative, earning 35,500, and I don't think you can get 35K as an entry-level call center agent in the provinces. This is for the TLs there, and unfortunately even for some operations managers who got screwed. But you can get 35K in the major cities, definitely Cebu, Davao, and of course Manila. Number 8 is actuarian, also with 35,500. Number 7 is production supervisor with 36,000, which might not sound so bad, but working at any business that operates 24/7, which is usually the case for production supervisors, 36K is pretty low if you think about the stress and the demand of the job. Number 6 is systems analyst or systems designer. This is probably some of the tech jobs, and it says it usually earns 42,000 pesos. My guess is you can earn twice that much in this country if you just work at the right place. And number 5 is computer programmer, which is probably the most outdated way to call a software engineer or a developer. 43,000 is a bit low, or probably average for entry level, but I've seen a lot of job postings for developers that earn over 100,000 pesos. Number 4 is mining engineer with 55,000. Not surprised, probably another underestimate. Number 3 is aircraft pilot or flight engineer at 57K. Number 2 is geologist, earning 64,000 pesos. Now, I'm not that familiar with this field, but it's likely that you need a PhD or a master's or some good experience before you can get 64K as a geologist. And number 1 is art director, 69,000 pesos. Now, this is a bit of a surprise, but then you could count those in marketing as art director, perhaps. Anyway, that's Dolly's list, which in my opinion is incredibly outdated and a bit out of touch. Here is one that sounds way more realistic, coming from the website salaryexplorer.com. So number 10 here is marketing director, which could earn as much as 95 by asking another question: should you regret the major you took in college? That's another question that I won't answer directly. Surely, some who might be listening are thinking to themselves, am I really living up to my potential, or did I just waste all that time, money, attention, and energy, all that blood, sweat, and tears, only to find myself stuck in a job I absolutely hate? Or worse, without a job. My response to that question is that your major shouldn't have to define you. I know people even from my very small home province who didn't even finish college and are massively successful in their own field because they persevered with it. And what does it take to persevere on something? Perhaps finding meaning, being passionate about it, or growing passionate about it, because sometimes you never really know if you love something until you give it a shot or give it the time that it needs. So it's either you find your passion, or maybe you're some savvy politician who got some massive kickbacks. Maybe that's why you're not so regretful of whatever you majored in college. But that's a topic for another episode. I hope you enjoyed listening. Thank you for tuning in. This has been Greg De La Cruz. Until next time.